Okay. Well, that was wonderful, and I think the audience is so impressed and so excited by everything that is happening in the forefront of research in Angelman syndrome, clearly. And you guys are asking such wonderful questions, so keep them coming. You know, your curiosity just pushes the science further, so keep the curiosity and ask these great questions. So our next speaker, I'm very excited to introduce, of course, Dr. Ed Weeber again, with Dr. Donna Herber. Donna Herber is the Chief Science Officer of Disruptive Nutrition, and they just put out a paper in 2016 that was just recently published looking at ketone esters as a treatment for Angelman syndrome. And we are very excited to welcome her because their clinical trials will be starting as well. So we want her to give us all the information that she can. So with no further ado, they'll put your, it's right up, it's up there.
You want to introduce Mike?
Our company, hello.
Okay.
Okay, lovely. I'm actually going to introduce the company's founder, Mike McCandless, and he's going to open up things for us, okay?
Sorry about that. No, I'm not going to mess with your slides. Don't worry about that. I'm mixing drinks at the front, which is far more fun. So you guys might have heard me speak here last year. It was an interesting time. We had the Turing pharmaceutical situation pop up where, you know, somebody took a $7 drug and made it $700 or whatever it was. And I made a comment at that time that as we move forward with our development, that would be one thing that we would not do. And I think it's always easy for people from a PR standpoint to stand up here and say that. But then the question is, when money's really on the table, what will you really do? And I wanted to lead this off because we had, Don and I had a very interesting experience 2 months ago, roughly, somewhere around in there. I took a meeting with somebody. We were awarded the patent on Angelman syndrome and ketone ester. And I've been trying to fly underneath the radar with some of our technology because we use it in other applications as well. And I took a meeting as a favor to a friend, which I didn't really want to do because it involved a very large investment group that has large pharmaceutical ties. And so Donna flew up to North Carolina, where we're based out of, and my CEO of one of my other companies was there, and myself. And we sit in this room, and I'm so proud of Donna because if anybody knows Donna, she's a little shy, you know, not very aggressive. And about halfway through this meeting, I was playing on my phone for most of it. They started talking about all of our different models and stuff, and they were like, well, you know, this Angelman's one's really, really interesting. And I immediately wanted to, you know, push them off of it. I'm like, oh, you know, it's not a really big population. You know, there's not a lot of money to be made there. And his response, which was probably one of the grossest moments I've had in the history of my life, was no. He goes, there's not a lot of them, that's right. But he goes, we could easily charge $100,000 a year for the technology that you're working on. And it's so hard not, I'm sorry, just lose your shit in that moment, because we've worked so hard to do all this stuff, and the cost of what we're doing is not going to be anywhere close to anything like that. And this guy was so happy to sit there in that moment. This is a fund that's over $1 billion. These people have money running everywhere. And I mentioned, I'm like, well, what? Couldn't you just have like one part of your company be philanthropic and, you know, maybe do this and do what it cost? I'm like, because to your point, there's not a lot of people. Wasn't even a consideration. And I tried to stay quiet because, as you can tell, I'm not the most politically correct person. And Donna did an amazing job of correctly putting him in his spot. And we all walked out of that room and we're standing at the elevator. And as soon as we got in the elevator, we all kind of looked at each other like, we're on the same page with this, right? Like, we're not even going to consider something like this. And it was a big moment for us because three people coming together in that room and being offered a lot of money to go and do something. But I have never in my life felt that disgusted by people, you know, probably ever. And so we're still staying. Yeah, thank you. We're still staying the course. And we've got some exciting news. I'm going to let them talk all the science stuff. I'm more of the drink mixer today, and I stick to the business side of stuff. That works out a lot better. I hope you guys will ask some questions. We've made a lot of progress in some areas, and we're not stopping. I mean, it's it's an everyday thing. So I'm super excited to be here. definitely looking forward to answering questions. I'll be here for the next day and a half, because it's the one time a year I actually wear a tuxedo, or a suit. So with that, who's going first? Are you going first? Okay. All right, I'll turn it over to Dr. Herber. Thank you very much.
I have to lower this about 18 inches to get it down from where he was using it. So like Agilis, we're a startup company that was founded utilizing technology developed at the University of South Florida, specifically in Dr. Weeber's lab and Dr. D'Agostino's lab. We are a very different approach, though. We are really a food company. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking to you about today is not a drug. I will talk to you about dietary supplements. I will talk to you about medical foods. So just kind of shift your brain a few gears as you hear this and think more about the body's metabolism, the brain's metabolism, the role that the foods your children eat and the foods you eat, and you know this very well, how they affect the brain's metabolism and the body's metabolism. Because, our mission here is to target that metabolism, high-quality nutrition products in order to support health and wellness. And I have just a little graphic on the bottom because I like to start with basic nutrition, and I know I'm going to offend some of you because you are much more in-depth in your nutrition than I am, but I want to just give a baseline for this. There's 3 macronutrients. There's fat, there's protein, there's carbohydrate. Your body breaks them down into amino acids, sugars, and in the case of what we're interested in, ketones. So think of ketones as the body's naturally occurring metabolites of fat. So what are we going to talk about? We'll talk a little bit about the ketogenic diet, our ketone products under development. Dr. Weeber is graciously presenting the data from his most recent publication, so the science behind what we're doing. I'll speak a little bit about the difference between supplements, medical foods, and drugs. And really what we want to hear today is how we can tailor this for you. So there's a way to make a product that has mass appeal, and then there's something that's more specific for what your family needs, what your child needs. And then we'll talk a little bit about our path forward. So the ketogenic diet has been used for almost 100 years for the treatment of epilepsy. There's a lot of success there, and that's really what is the basis of our hopes for our approach. This has been used very successfully. In many cases, the children or even adults can come off of their anti-epileptic medications, and the whole onus behind the research that was originally done. And a small number of patients with AS have also been treated with this. Now, the ketogenic diet is, let me go back, hold on. See if it'll do it. Yeah. The ketogenic diet is very heavy on fats. So coconut oil, butter, avocado, very, very, very heavy on fat. The majority of the meal, if you had 5 cups of food, 4 cups of it would be pure fat. And only 1 cup of it would have some protein and a very little amount of carbohydrate in it. So if you think about on your plate 4 cups of fat and 1 cup of something else, that's not very appetizing. And also it's not very friendly to your GI tract. But the way that works is the fat is metabolized to ketones. It's the ketones that are circulating in your blood. It's the ketones that go to the brain and to the muscle and to the heart to fuel. So why use ketones? Why not just use the diet? Why not use other sources of nutrition? So ketones are those fat-derived molecules. They occur naturally in the body. They're utilized, like I said, by muscle and brain, and they're an alternative energy source. And then when I say alternative, I mean like an alternative to carbohydrates, because most folks think of the fuel that we get from pasta and bread and sugar, fruits. The sugar that's in these are the primary fuel in the standard American diet to generate glucose molecules. As I said, these are naturally occurring in the body. This shows a little bit of what's going on in the body, and you see these 3 compounds on the right. Beta-hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate are two of the ones that we really focus on. And the primary advantage is the lack of reliance on carbohydrates. This reduces the impacts of two things, glucose and insulin, both of which have pleiotropic tons and tons and tons of different kinds of actions on the body and on the brain. So it avoids both of those. And this would be really important in things like metabolic disorders, as well as in health and wellness. So we're looking at a series of different ketone boosters. We spoke to you last year about a specific one, which is the ketone ester, and Dr. Weeber is going to present some data on that specific molecule, but we're looking at a kind of like a suite of different ones. In some cases, the palatability, the way it tastes, is better, but it's not as potent. It doesn't give as high a boost of ketones. In some cases, the ketones that are generated are beta-hydroxybutyrate. Other cases, it's acetoacetate. So we're looking at a variety of different ketone boosters because we think that we have a better chance of finding what's most suitable for you by having more than one product to choose from. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Weeber to talk to you about his most recent publication about the most potent of the ketone products that we've been looking at, which is the ketone ester.
So I have to tell you, when we've been doing work in Angelman for a long time. I had a graduate student, Stephanie Blankenship was her unmarried name at the time, that was interested in Angelman Syndrome. Everybody that comes into my lab, I show them all this stuff and they say, can we do Angelman Syndrome research? So she was dead set to do AS research. She wanted to do something in an area that didn't receive a lot of attention, and so she really started to focus on seizure control. And so it really made us kind of retool the lab a little bit and buy some new equipment and put the AS gene on a background of the mouse that had a high seizure propensity. So just for ease of presentation, I'm going to kind of go back and forth on the different strains of mice that we use, but kind of give you the highlight of what we did and some of those results. Now, we were looking at a lot of different therapeutics, and at the time, for those of you that know, when you're getting your PhD, you have to get a committee together with different faculty, and Dr. D'Agostino was on her committee and said, you know what, you should try this ketone ester that we're working on. And so it was just a weird thing that he happened to be on her committee, come up with this idea, and you'll see the results from that. So it made sense to look into ketones, and she already, Dr. Herber already had these references up there. It's been shown to be effective in Angelman syndrome. We've already seen this in a couple publications. I would say, probably the most interesting thing that we've seen is this effect on the EEG. So this is an EEG 2 years following ketone diet, and you can see that those EEGs look completely different. So it made sense to go ahead and try the ketone ester in our mouse model. So it was pretty straightforward on what we wanted to do. We did a 10% total volume in their chow. So mice don't have a long way to go. They have water, they have food, and they have a small cage. We had to mix the ketone ester with their food and kind of made this mash, and we put it down there for them to eat. We did this for 8 weeks, and then we started to do our behavioral testing. The first thing that we saw was that there was actual changes in the biochemistry in the brain, which was pretty interesting to see. And one of the things that we hypothesized that the ketone diet and this ketone ester would actually increase GABA, and you've heard GABA before in some of these talks. This would be an increase in interneuron GABA, and that changes those interneurons. These are not excitatory neurons, these are inhibitory neurons, and we actually saw an increase in a kind of a rescue of that particular protein in those interneurons, which was most certainly interesting. One We also saw a weight normalization. So at least in the animal model and the mouse model, the mice are usually heavier, they're bigger. We've talked about this at previous scientific meetings about the AS mouse being kind of a larger fat pads than wild type mice. But with the ketone ester diet, we saw kind of a normalization of those weights compared to AS mice that were not on the diet. Now, whether that was from the ketones, we don't really know, or it could be some kind of a CNS thing that was causing them to eat less. We're not exactly sure, but it was significant, and we definitely did see a difference. Now, she was focused on seizure, but I'm all about learning and memory and looking at the phenotypes and symptoms of the AS mouse. And so, well, she just wanted to kind of look at the, potentially EEG, EMG, seizure propensity, all these things. I said, no, we're a learning and memory lab, run these guys through everything. And it was just about the time that this idea of tonic tone and GABA tone in the brain was kind of coming out. And so it made sense. If you were changing the tone in the brain, maybe you would have effect on other systems. And so the first thing that we did was look at the rotor rod, and we were pretty amazed that mice on the ketone diet had an improvement on that rotating rod, and you can see a picture of it down below. Where's the pointer at? Yeah. There we go. So this is our accelerating rotor rod. You put the mice on, it starts to get faster and faster and faster. AS mice fall off much quicker. We can do 4 trials a day for 2 days. This is what our AS mice look like, and our ketone diet mice were right there with wild type levels. Now this could be that they're a little bit more svelte, and they've lost some weight. They can probably stay on there a little bit better. We're taking that into consideration, but it certainly was a difference that we saw and we were pretty impressed with. This is let me go back one. This is a wire hang test that we do where we actually put the animal on a wire and see how long they can hold on. Muscle tone in the AS mouse and their ability to hold on isn't quite as good. They are a little bit heavier though, so they've got more weight to hold on there. We take that into consideration, but also we do what's called a hind limb clasping reflex. So with AS mice, if you hold them up, they'll clasp their 2 hind legs together. Sometimes we do this to kind of genotype them really quickly. It's a response, and Scott gave us some insight. We're not really sure whether it's a motor response or almost like an anxiety response when they're being held upside down. They don't like that. A wild type mouse will kind of splay their back legs. An Angelman mouse will put their legs together. It's really clear to see, and when we look at the AS mice on the 10%, they don't clasp as much. So that was another phenotype that appeared to be different. They looked like they had increased muscle function for sure, and the wire test, we could really see a difference with this. Our wild type, it didn't change, but our AS got increasingly better. And I've talked about synaptic plasticity before. This was something that we thought, well, if there's alterations in this kind of GABA tone that was occurring, would it have an effect on the hippocampus? Would it increase neuronal function? And indeed, we saw an improvement in both of the different strains that we looked at as far as long-term potentiation and increased synaptic function. So we did another test. This is a different kind of learning and memory test that you're probably not familiar with. This is the novel object recognition test. It's a very straightforward test. You put a mouse in a box. There's 2 objects that are identical. You give it time to investigate what those 2 objects are, and then 24 hours later, you put it back into the box with one of the objects being the same, one of them being different. You would assume that they've already been familiar with the object A, so they'll go to the novel object and spend more time there. And when you look at that instance, wild type mice will do this. They remember what those 2 objects were. They go to the novel object. AS mice don't remember that well. They have this learning and memory defect. They spend less time with the novel object. When we give the ketone ester, now they're looking at the novel object again. So we've improved their memory. We've improved synaptic function in the hippocampus. This was really a nice set of experiments. We wanted to do another form of learning and memory. So this is associative learning and memory, where the mouse associates one thing with another. In this case, it associates being in a novel context with receiving a mild foot shock. I used to show movies of this. I don't do it anymore because I was getting bad emails. It's not a painful shock that they get. We don't want to light up the pain pathways. It's aversive. If you've ever, touched an electrical wire and got a zap, your finger doesn't hurt the next day, but you don't want to do it again. It's very aversive. You remember, okay, don't touch those two wires together. It's the same thing with a mouse. A mouse that's put in this context and gets this foot shock, if you put that mouse in 24 hours later, a day later, a week later, you can even do it months later, they'll freeze. They'll freeze in anticipation of getting that shock in that context. They associate the stimulus with being in that context, and it's a very, very strong memory. AS mice don't remember this well in this contextual for conditioning. We can see that here, how much they freeze. When we give the ketone ester to the mice, they remember. 24 hours later, 72 hours later, we put them back in that box, they freeze in anticipation. They have that associative learning and memory that comes back. We can put it into a different context and a different smells and give it the tone and see how much it freezes. AS mice don't have a defect in that cued fear conditioning, that associative learning, and the ketone ester didn't appear to affect that at all. So it didn't enhance memory, but what it did was it recovered that associative memory, which importantly is hippocampal dependent as well. So we also saw with increased levels of ketone, this increased levels of GABA, which makes sense. So again, we're not only changing that GABAergic tone, but the main reason for this was to see if the ketone ester supplement, now this is with their regular diet, you got to remember, we're just adding the supplement to it. We're not putting them into on a ketogenic diet. We're just giving them the supplement. But with this increase in ketone levels came an increase in GABA. So going back to the original purpose of this, does this change their seizure propensity? And we can assess this by doing audiogenic seizures. Now people go, oh, loud noises don't make my children seize, but these are really, really loud noises. So I put this little graphic, here so you can kind of see a decibel scale. When you start getting up here, passenger cars around 70 decibel, jackhammer about 100, a rock band, depending on the rock band, I guess, 110. A large jet taking off, if you're out in the airport and you hear a jet taking, it's really loud. It's 120 decibel. That's the kind of tone that we give these animals to induce their seizure. So you have them in an isolation chamber, you give them 30 seconds of 120 decibel noise, and they will seize. It's a very standard way that you can do this audiogenic induced seizure. It's a very strong phenotype in a certain strain of the AS mouse. And certainly we can get almost 80%, over 80% of the AS mice to seize when you give them that very loud tone, and that reduces significantly when you give them the ketone ester. So that propensity to go into seizure with that loud noise appears to go away. The latency to seize, so the animals that do seize here, it takes them longer to seize, so they have to hear that noise much longer than an Angelman mouse that is not receiving the ketone diet. And we can also do this by inducing seizure with kainate, which is a standard way that you can chemically induce seizure. We see a different profile as well. So indeed, our initial hypothesis was, yes, this could be having an effect on seizure propensity, and this is what we see. It's an anticonvulsant. But it does a whole lot more. I mean, we were really shocked to see that it was changing its learning and memory, changing synaptic function by just changing the diet like this. Now, I'm sure the parents are out there going, yeah, diet has a lot to do with this. But for us, with this experimental model, even though I made Stephanie do all this work, we were pretty shocked by the amounts of changes to the symptoms of this AS mouse. So we think not only could it be used as an anticonvulsant, but it could have other far-reaching effects as well in synaptic function, GABAergic tone, and also those processes that underlie the motor function defect that we see. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Donna, Very excited about these results. This is an open access journal. You can get this paper. Just go on PubMed, hit the link, and you should be able to download it if you want to look at these specifically, these results. Great.
Okay, when I first got up here, I made a pointed effort to describe the fact that we're a food company. We work in a very different space than a drug company. And one of the things I kind of wanted to highlight, and Paula encouraged me to do this last year, and it's been very good for me as well, and we have a lot of new faces here this year, so I decided it would be a good thing to do again. But where we are in terms of trying to bring therapies to your children, there's a lot of different paths that you can take, and it's kind of a continuum. I mean, when you think about how you can impact the body, we have conventional foods, dietary supplements, medical foods, all the way up to drugs. And this is, like I said, a continuum. Foods falling at one end of the spectrum in terms of safety and oversight, and drugs falling at the polar opposite end of the spectrum in terms of the criteria that they have to meet to show safety and for oversight. Now, I circled medical food because when we first got into this research program, that's where our focus was. It was to design products that fit into that niche, but what I'm going to present to you today is more along the lines of this continuum, and also introduce you to one of our earliest products, which is actually not a medical food at this point because I haven't had all the feedback I need to how to make it exactly for you guys. It's a dietary supplement. So I want to explain a little bit more about what that looks like and why one product might fall into one category versus another category. So drugs, we've talked a lot about those today. We've talked about those that are orally available, traditional drugs, as well as gene therapies, which are definitely cutting edge. But the level that is required for clinical studies, for preclinical studies, for regulatory oversight is very burdensome, and it slows down the process, even under the best of timelines. And I saw a really aggressive one this morning. I saw a really aggressive one. It was beautiful. It was the very first presentation, and it was like, 2 to 3 years of preclinical, 2 to 3 years of clinical, and maybe 6 months to 18 months of approval. And I was like, oh, that would be lovely. That would be lovely that, that kind of an aggressive timeline and even pushing that up is hopeful. But what we're trying to do is bring you things that don't need that level of clinical burden and don't need that level of regulatory oversight, so we can give you something sooner. Now, when I talk about medical foods, it's got a definition. The FDA likes to define things. And I think this is helpful for you as well. I mean, whenever you want to, Google medical food or Google dietary supplement, they are different. And so the FDA gives us some guidance on how they're different. So medical foods are used under a physician's oversight. So if your child is going and regularly meeting with a neurologist, that's a physician's oversight. And these are the types of products that are prescribed in a way. So, and then the physician is monitoring their response to the food. So they might be monitoring blood levels. They might be monitoring seizure activity. They might be monitoring weight gain, weight loss, things like that. But it's used under a physician's supervision. It's not a drug, it's a food. It's a very specialized food, and that food should be designed and tailored for the disease population that it's intended to help. You won't hear me necessarily say treat, because it's not a drug, and I don't want to confuse you to think that it is. It's building off of that ketogenic diet. Now, I want to pause for a second. How many parents, families in here have used a ketogenic diet with their child? How many are currently still doing that? Okay. So these types of products do have some FDA oversight. They have a higher level of burden of proof for safety, and they can go through clinical studies in order to make specific claims. Like for the for the dietary support or nutritional support of patients with Angelman syndrome. That would be a claim. So that would be something that would need a clinical study to go with it. Now, dietary supplement comes down on that continuum. It may have the exact same ingredients as a medical food, but it doesn't have treatment claims. It doesn't have to go through clinical studies. It is not necessarily tailored specifically to the disease and nutritional requirements of a significant population, such as an Angelman's population. And what we have here today is our up-and-coming dietary supplement that's got a ketone in it. So we have it up here, and we are going to sample it for you. It has beta-hydroxybutyrate in it, which is the naturally occurring endogenous ketone. So parents, please come forward after we're done, taste it. It does not have any carbohydrates in it. It is fueled by ketones.
I just want to say something to that. It's not artificially flavored, so there's no artificials, no artificial colors, flavors, dyes, any of that. It's all naturally flavored. So with this population, we figured that was a top priority. That's why it took a little longer for us to do it. Natural flavors are very difficult. The flavor to prepare you is apple pear. So we have 3 flavors that we'll come out with. We brought apple pear because, quite frankly, it was the one we had enough volume of to bring here and actually do. So just so you prepare your palate for what you're going to drink. This would normally be mixed 10 to 14 ounces per scoop, which you'll talk about that. So just so if you have an idea for sweetness level and things like that, it can be altered totally by the volume of water you put into it. So if you try it, it's not sweet enough for you, that can be adjusted simply by lowering the water volume. If it's too sweet, same thing, just add more water to it. So I'll be pouring them in cups up here, and then after we're done, you guys are free to come up and try it.
So this is going to be launched next year as a dietary supplement. Okay, this contains ingredients that we can also use in a medical food. We are also simultaneously working on the ketone ester, which is a booger. Oh my goodness, to work with. I mean, think about when you take I hate to say it, a scoop of Gatorade and you mix it in water, it mixes up nice and it dissolves, right? Well, the beta-hydroxybutyrate product that we've developed is just like that. It's nice, it dissolves nice. The ketone ester is jet fuel. Okay, try mixing that with water. Try making that one natural flavored. We've come a long way on getting that ingredient produced in a manner that is safe, that doesn't use nasty solvents, that we can analyze it in our QC labs and show that there are no heavy metals in it, there are no nasty solvents in it, that it is the pure jet fuel that we were trying to make. And so now we're working on those steps of a formulation. And I put this up here because now I'm going to talk to you from a medical food perspective. I need your help. We all say this. Jody said this so beautifully. We can't do this without you. But here, I'm not injecting it. I'm expecting your children to taste it. So please, please come up, try our first shot at this approach of putting a ketone in a food, well, in this case, in a beverage. Mike's mixing drinks up here. And one of the things that we just really need to understand is how to make it work for you as a mother, as a father, as a caregiver, how to make it work for your children. And so things like, I have questions. How many of you, please, by a show of hands, monitor your kids' blood glucose? All righty then. Monitor your kids' blood ketones. Maybe their urinary ketones? Okay. All right. I already asked the question about a ketogenic diet. I think there's also the legit diet, the low glycemic index diet. Raise of hands, anybody using legit? Nice, okay. What about just low carb in general? You avoid carbs with your kids. All right, one of the interesting things when Dr. Weeber was presenting his diet, and I was talking with Dr. D'Agostino about this too, is that we say it was a standard rodent diet. They had carbs, they had proteins, they had their regular, and we just added something onto it. And I said, but I don't eat the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't eat the same thing for snack. My blood glucose goes like, ooh, cupcake, ooh, egg. And it doesn't stay the same. With the animals, they're like this. So that's another question I have for you. With your children, do you try and keep it kind of steady state for them? How many of you are kind of focused on keeping a steady state macronutrient profile? Yeah. So these are the kinds of things that we're trying to think of as how you would use this. How would you give your child the ketones in addition to their diet? I talk a lot with Dominic as well about what I call the cupcake test. You guys introduced me to this cupcake problem, this birthday cake problem. So my question is, when something like that, when a sugar load is happening or is going to happen, because none of us are perfect. None of us can perfectly monitor what our children get nor what we consume. So one of the things we want to understand is, does ketone supplementation, does nutritional ketone supplementation benefit prior to a sugar influx? Is it better to give it with a sugar influx? Would it help after a sugar influx? So these are the kinds of things we're trying to figure out also as we study this potentially in the clinic. I told you before, I'm having to let go of this. We don't have to study it in the clinic. We have something here for you now to taste as adults. We are looking at to see what happens with blood glucose, what happens with blood ketones in all of our products without doing formal clinical studies. But if we're going to work into, once the ketone ester gets a little farther along, it's nice and potent, what does that study look like for you? How do you measure success with this product? Because we may not be looking at seizure reduction to begin with. We may say, is this tolerable? What are you looking for in terms of adding to your child's diet, mucking about with your child's diet? What are your concerns when you do that? It's different than potentially with a drug. So these are the things that we want to know. How would you know it works? And then the other thing, and please feel free to get up and ask me questions, what are your concerns about this kind of an approach? I think we all accept a certain level of risk with a drug. We say, hey, it's a drug. Hey, it's a needle in the brain to deliver gene therapy. We know there are risks with doing something like that, potentially enormous benefit too. So, but we're talking about adding things to the diet. What are your concerns there? What have you noticed with your children in the past that be triggers? Everybody's different. Every child is going to be different, but I think the more we learn and the more we hear, the better concept we will have about generalities across the population. And so this kind of shows where we are progressing. We've done a lot of work here in the raw material production, as well as moving forward in our safety profile. So we have to get a regulatory status for these ingredients, and they're called generally recognized as safe. So all of this is moving forward very nicely. We've got almost completed this with our beta-hydroxybutyrate, and we've got a feasibility for this with the ketone ester. We've worked on product formulation, and like I said, we have some up here for you to try with one of our ketone boosters. This is going to be a challenge with the jet fuel, but we're working on it. We have some ideas. I was just talking with a couple of different groups yesterday about a couple of different approaches. Not the standard approach, but I think we need something different. And this is the point at which we can launch a dietary supplement, like in the spring, because it doesn't have medical treatment claims on it. But if we want to move forward with something more specific for our angels, then that's going to look something more like a clinical study. We work very closely with Ed, as I have for, goodness, 8 years now, to make maybe something more along the line of a tolerability study and to look for you as to what your initial outcomes would be as you change your child's diet, add something to your child's diet. And then that's when we can go more into the medical food side and then maybe get more studies on seizures and motor coordination and things like that, but we can't start there. That's a big leap to start with. We want to start with just making sure that it's something that's suitable for your families. This is us. And as you notice, really fully in my heart and in my mind, half of what we've ever done, we owe to the researchers at USF. We didn't have a thing until they came up with these ideas and did all their hard work. And we've got money from the state of Florida to fund a lot of this research too, and the foundation. It's amazing. It's amazing. We came to this pretty late in the game, actually. And that's it. I have some questions.
I do want to say that the studies that she talks about wanting to do with Weeber are something that we will fund. I mean, a study will be done. It's more getting clarification on what exactly to do, but it's not a question of if we're going to do it. We are going to do it. We just don't know exactly how that's going to look just yet.
So we have some questions. Yes, ma'am.
Yep, I have two. My son's been on a specialized diet since he was 2.5, and he's now 16. So he was on the keto for years, and then we switched him to a modified Atkins just because of the hunger issue.
Yep.
And amazing. He's done amazing. And two of the questions. One is, if he's already on a diet and he has ketones and we check them, could too much ketones be too much, like supplementing with this, with that?
We don't anticipate with the dosing that we've been looking at across a lot of different studies. Like the product that's up here right now is based on beta hydroxybutyrate sodium that has been used actually clinically for a lot of different things for 40, 50 years. And if we look at the same kind of dosing there, as well as what we're anticipating with the ketone ester, no, it's not going to be an issue. Overdose is always possible if you take the entire container and consume
Well,
it.
I just mean if I kept him on his regular diet, do I need to do this, or would this be something I could taper him, give him a few more carbs to expand his diet and then do that? I mean,
that's what we'd like to understand. That's always been the goal. That's always been the goal, to be able to make your dinner experience something that's a lot easier. And also, in the cases of families where they're not able to do this diet or where it's not working as well, to hopefully boost the ability of blood ketones to attenuate a lot of what's going on. So.
Okay. And then I guess the other question would be, would this be something that he would take 3 times a day? Like, is it something that you take in the morning? What's the lifespan of, how long is it in your system?
It kind of depends on the supplement. So the one that we have out here for you today is a pretty quick burst beta hydroxybutyrate as a fuel for your muscles and your brain and your cells, and it tapers off pretty quickly, let's say within an hour. The ketone ester that we're working on has a higher boost, but it tends to taper off a little more slowly. We're going to also try and adjust the formulations a little bit, add some other things to the formulation to be able to kind of keep it a little bit higher and steady state. But honestly, we'll have to see. The initial formulations are more of a burst effect without having anything else in there to slow it down. So it would probably be multiple times a day. I would hope nothing more than 3 times a day, something along the lines of, taken with meals or something along that line.
Okay. The last thing I'd like to add is if anyone hasn't gotten to this, do explore it. The benefits my son has had is amazing. And the first thing I ever tell anyone who contacts me when their child's been diagnosed is diet. I think this has been his life changer. He went seizure-free. Not all kids get that, but his cognition and everything, diet, this way I would say is the first thing to try and do, because it's amazing.
To go to your earlier question about, how much and to what level and if he's on a ketogenic diet, if you've done the ketogenic diet, as you know, the biggest issue is there's no constant. You put 10 people in this room on the ketogenic diet, give them all the same foods, monitor things, numbers are going to be all over the place, not by like a huge margin, but generally there's variation. We start getting obsessed over a particular number. I would say at that point in your situation, it's looking for your desired effect. And if you're seeing that more in the 3 millimolar range than say the 2 millimolar range, because some people struggle to get up to the higher numbers, then this is likely where that would fit in. On average per serving, the max you would take at a serving, 1 millimolar is about what you're going to see as an increase. on somebody, who is already ketogenic and then raising it that much. So that's what you would see. And one product we were not able to bring here today, but we will have a meal replacement that's a high-fat meal replacement that comes out at the exact same time as this. That's a coconut oil, MCT oil. Once again, no artificial colors, flavors, sweeteners. Uses grass-fed whey protein. It's in a 1-to-1 ratio of fat to protein and carbs. So it's 13 grams of fat, 6 grams of fiber, and 7 grams of protein. Comes out at about 155 calories. That'll be out in March as well, and honestly, it's probably one of the best tasting things I've ever made, and I've been doing this for a long time. So, so if you do end up liking the taste of this, I'm really excited about our meal replacement to help with compliance on the diet.
We have another question?
Yeah, I have a 27-year-old daughter who has had really serious seizure history from age 2 to just as recently as a couple of years ago. Different seizures started recurring, and I don't know if it's because of that, but she also craves carbs. She's a little tiny thing, but would only eat cookies and bread if I let her. We didn't have, even just trying to go low glycemic, not even, the ketogenic, she just wouldn't eat, literally wouldn't eat. I was worried about having to get a feeding tube and all of that. She lost so much weight. So now she gets almost all of her protein and fat from things like Greek yogurt, smoothies, and supplements that I put in. So I'm really excited about the idea of something that I can give her that will, get the ketones without having her to be compliant with the diet, because she won't be. I mean, even with, I know it's not the same thing, but toilet training, I mean, she held her bladder for 7 or 8 hours rather than comply, She's just a really stubborn kid. So anywho, but one of my questions was, after last year, I just Googled ketone ester and saw that, you can get it off Amazon. So, I mean, would just adding any old thing like that help in her situation, especially since she has such a horrible seizure history, or should we wait for things? I mean, I'm not really sure what to do. I want to help her, obviously.
I agree. I know we do want to help, and one of the tough parts about being in dietary supplements and nutritional supplements is. Stop laughing at me.
Is this the part where I need to step in because I'm less politically correct?
Honey, you couldn't be more politically incorrect than me, so you don't worry about offending me, just because I don't know what I'm doing.
Just to clarify, what you would have seen on Amazon would not
Yeah.
have actually have been a ketone ester.
Well, good thing I didn't buy it.
Yes,
Please don't do that. Please don't do that.
Yeah, we do need to clarify that sometimes if you see something like raspberry ketones, that is not anything in the realm of what we are dealing with. Some ketone esters will start to pop up. You'll start to see the term coming up soon, probably in the next 60 to 90 days. She mentioned solvents and different things and how these things are manufactured. There is a very nasty way to make ketone esters that is likely more cost efficient for some people. We are not going that route and have, because of Donna's work at USF and working with their labs, have developed processes and proper ways to actually make things so that what we make is a great product. So not that there won't be other people that do it, but I can tell you that if it wasn't for Donna and USF, there would be no method for how to make this, because they were the first people to do it. And I've got 20 years of manufacturing experience, and I know everybody who's making everything right now in this particular space, and nobody has the proper process or method. And if we wouldn't have developed it, there wouldn't be one. And so eventually that'll get out, because we'll make it and then people will copy it. But if other people end up making what we're making, I can promise you it will be more expensive. Because that's not our goal. So
One of the things that you need to know about me, I come from pharma. I come from quality control and quality assurance in pharma. So what I expect from our products is an extremely high level of compliance in terms of quality standards. But beyond that, these are babies. These are our children. We're making it for your kids. You can trust it.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just have one last.
We wanted to finish a little bit early on our presentation time since there is a scheduled break from 3:15 to 3:30 to give people time to come up and try stuff. And like I said, we'll be around all weekend. We're happy to answer any questions or try to. And I hope you like apple pear.